Okay, thank you so much, Sara, for your time. I know you're in your beautiful studio in-house in New York with the beautiful snow, and I was just very excited to speak with you. I've known you for some time now, and eh, I love that other people will have the opportunity to learn more about what's behind your beautiful work eh, as well. So, welcome, welcome. I thought we would just start by you telling us who you are, where you come from, and where you're at now in your career as an artist.
Thank you, Raquel, for having me. It's been a pleasure to get to know you through the few years that we've been chatting and getting to know each other and understanding each other. And this is a great opportunity to have an interesting conversation today. Um, I'm very excited. A little bit about me. I'm Sara Rayo. I'm Colombian born, New York City raised, artist, designer, photographer, mother too, because that's a good creative process as well. You got to get creative parenting as well.
Absolutely.
Um, I went to Pratt Institute for college after going to a private girls' school in New York City, which was quite the experience in the 90s. Um, with always the idea of somehow working on my art in the background of my mind, but I did want to go to college and have a some kind of other career to hold me up in case of a situation. I went in, I looked for art schools for fashion. That was my first idea. I wanted to be a fashion designer.
Wow.
Yeah, I looked at RISD, I looked at SVA, I looked at Pratt, and I wound up deciding on Pratt. But yeah, because my father's mother, both my grandmothers sewed, and they made these amazing dresses, and I thought that I would like to keep that line of creativity going alongside my father's. But then I got into first year foundation, which most art schools have that first year where you do basic drawing, basic design, and basic, what was the other one? Drawing color. And then you kind of figure out which route you want to take. So you decide your major in sophomore year. And I liked designing, I liked drawing the dresses, but then the sewing really scared me. So I so I went with design, with graphic design. So that's where my career started, alongside what I had already begun. I think at 12, I had my first show.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
At 12, my
Okay.
father would set up and he would, wherever he was showing in different areas in Colombia. My father was a very well-known geometric op art artist from Colombia, who moved to New York City in the late 40s, I think.
hmm I was gonna ask you exactly about your father and your inspiration as an artist, touching on the points of studying something that is related to art, but is more design. And you grew up in a household of creatives, right? In literature, in art, I would say even in passion, everyone probably was very artistic and creative. How did that inform your work to begin with? And then later on, through design, through maybe other things that you learned, how did your work evolve to be what it is right now?
Um, it it started just drawing on the floor at my father's feet when I was little. Uh, he just would give me a pen and paper, and I mean, 2 years old, I was already drawing human figures.
Wow.
It looked like potatoes, but from somebody, I think, who told my mom that the children don't start drawing human figures until later. So she was very amazed at the fact that I could conceive of a human figure at that young age. And then as I started getting older, my father would take me to his studio every weekend. It was ballet, violin, and studio. So I had the whole,
Amazing.
yeah, very culturally open. And then either that or it was go to a museum and see whatever show was going on, Guggenheim, Whitney, Met, MoMA, whatever was around. And then we'd go to the studio and paint.
Hmm.
So that was the beginning of my creative process, has just been part of my life. I mean, I can't even remember not having a paintbrush in my hand or a pencil drawing something or other, or thinking of something. So seeing my father work with the museum that he had in Colombia and designing all of the book covers and and what do they call it? Not the albums.
Catalogs?
Playing for catalogs, yeah. Whoa. The catalog covers, he would design all of them. And he would say, I may be an artist, but I'm also a designer and I'm a photographer. And he's like, as a creative person, you have to use your creativity for other parts of what surrounds you, not just art.
Yep.
So that's where, I started getting the idea of maybe studying something more creative, but that could hold a basis or a foundation during moments where I couldn't show, or if there was, problems with finding a gallery or finding a place to exhibit, that you're always thinking as an artist. And I know a lot of artists have, 2 or 3 different areas where they work in. Some are teachers, some have design jobs, some do other things to maintain their career and lifestyle.
Hmm.
So, so I looked for an art school. I knew I was not going to study anything that wasn't involved in art or creative process. It was not liberal arts at all.
Hmm.
I made sure that I looked for colleges that would give me that foundation. And then I went into thinking I was going to do fashion, and no.
And here we are now.
And here we are now.
So
But
your
it gave
work,
me a really good basis to understand now where I'm at now, understand how I can, juggle everything. I have my own brand. I can brand myself.
hmm
And that just comes from the experience in college, the experience in teaching, what I learned in college, and the experience in packaging design and all the other jobs that I had, even while I was exhibiting, even while I was painting and working as,
hmm
as a designer, I kept my creative flow.
Yeah. It is something that you and I have talked a lot about, which is this idea of how artists can implement areas of utilized in other businesses in other industries to create a brand. And a brand doesn't necessarily mean just commercial, 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 but it could be a personal brand, right? It could be something aesthetic, iconography, an emotion that makes people relate to you, to your work, too. And I'm curious for you to tell me, but also the people listening, how did you arrive to your current quote unquote brand, your personal brand, your artistic ecosystem of values? I would say a lot of your work is about interconnectivity. It's on paper. You can see maybe different inspirations in your work, but where does it all come?
It's been years in the making, I would say.
Yeah.
I don't think I branded myself when I was still a designer. I started working on my logo. I started working on, what my values were. They've changed a little bit, but not that much. Um, and then when I decided to make my brand as an artist, it shifted a little bit, and I shifted a little bit. The logo changed slightly. Um, but it's the experience that I've had in life in my career. That's what's brought me to where I am now. Graduating from college and working in New York City as a designer was an experience. It was amazing. And, I worked with L'Oreal, I worked with Liz Claiborne, I just window dressed for Christian Dior. It was, it was the highlight of being a designer. And then I moved to Miami and I got to work with an architecture firm, and which shifted a little bit from packaging to regular design work and working for the company. But moving to Colombia, when I got pregnant and had my oldest, my 17-year-old, I decided to move to Colombia, and there my career shifted to teaching. And that was 10 years of an
Wow.
amazing experience. Just you stay current with your students, which is so important when you're shifting from just out of college, your working experience, and then you start to I saw the shift of, okay, I'm teaching all that I learned that's so recent and current, which was great because I was still young, but I already had that experience, but I was able to keep current with the trends and what they need and what they wanted and what they were learning with the programs. And I had this retroactivity of just exchange so many ideas, and I learned
Mm-hmm.
so much from them, as much, I'm sure, as I taught them. So it was this wonderful 10-11 year experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that also helped me keep my identity in my art world as well,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what led me to go back to SVA to do a summer residency and go back to studying as I was teaching. So that, I think that right there with the retroalimentación, I want to say in Spanish. I don't know.
Uy, no,
That's not
that's
a
a
word
very
in
hard word.
English.
The feedback with
Yeah,
all the
feedback.
feedback from everything you received
I
from
like the
those
word
years of
feedback
experience.
because it
Yeah,
sounds.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's what really, that was the gateway to coming back to source, I would say. I mean, to the source
Hmm.
of what I really am at heart, which is an artist. I mean, I've
An
got
artist.
all the other experiences, but that it makes me whole.
Hmm. And also having all those experiences, it forms your art somehow. I think what's interesting is going from beauty packaging, which is a very small medium, for example, or scale, and then going into architecture is a different type of scale, and you think about a product or an end result differently than you would do if you were designing beauty packaging, for example. And then with teaching is how you communicate that to the world. So has that changed the way you see scale in your work, or it hasn't?
I think all of the experiences that I've had with all the different jobs that I've had have helped me understand the world that we live in and the dimensionality that we live in. With packaging, I mean, I understood how to visually represent on the computer, or from the sketch to the computer to the actual thing. So that process was easy for me to understand. So bringing that into my work was seamless.
Mm-hmm.
And then working with architecture, which was the same thing. Like I learned how to understand the architectural drawings that we
Right, the structure. Hmm. So take us through the process of how you ideate a new artwork.
had. Oh,
How does it go from mine to, that beautiful piece that you have behind you? How does it get made?
it starts with investigating, or something that I'm constantly doing, and
Hmm.
investigating leads to inspiration. So, I mean, it could be a quote, it could be a visual, it could be, the cymatics that I've been studying with the way water moves with vibration. It could, looking at the flower of life and all the sacred geometry forms and what they represent inside the body, outside of the body, all the different platonic solids. all the what's under the microscope and what can all the way down to, an atom, which all of that nature and science really inspires me. And then from macro to micro, so even in the universe and how we connect and how everything is just fractals.
Mhm.
Everything big and small is almost the same representation. So that investigation leads to the inspiration, which I draw out with geometric drawings. I don't sketch unless it's like for a sculpture. But all the pieces and the forms are made of geometric shapes one way or another, and then they're folded. So I go from that to either drawing it out on the computer, drawing it out by hand with a compass, and then getting right to the paper.
Mhm.
So there isn't like an exact, I don't have like a piece that I print out, for example. Everything's hand drawn on the paper, and then I choose the color. And that also either it comes in the middle of my inspiration, it comes from seeing, a sunset. So I'm like, oh, I love the blue, green, yellow, red. So I'm going to do a
Mhm.
piece with that, and I have all my different folders of color ideas and shape ideas. And then it goes to this. And some pieces are so easy to make, and some pieces will take months. It's just the way
Mm.
that I flow with the piece or the piece flows with me. And sometimes it's just, okay, you're not working. Okay. I'm gonna let you sit for a while. I'll come
Right.
back to you later. Because I get mad, I get upset and I get mad at them. And I'm like, you're giving me a hard time.
Mhm.
Why are you being so difficult? So I'll leave them alone and let them sit.
Right. They're like part of you,
Yeah.
somehow. I always thought, when people go through museums and we all have this friend that goes, "Oh, I could have done that. I could have drawn that." And I'm sure, but people don't understand how difficult it is to come up with an idea. Coming up with an idea is easy, right? But making that idea into something, it's extremely hard in anything, in business, in art, in anything that we think about. So it's not as easy, as it seems. And just thinking about how artists think of something and translate that into whatever medium it is that they're using, to me, it's almost like a magical eh, activity.
And the creative process, at least with the way that I work, I have two avenues that I go down. Some pieces I'll just start with a paper. Just I have my inspiration, I have my ideas, but it's like, okay, what's gonna come? What am I gonna just bring out as more of an expression of what I'm feeling? And then the other side is, okay, this one was very well thought out, and I had it in my mind, I drew it out, and I was able to create it. But I like having those both avenues of creative expression. Even
Hmm.
though they're similar in my style, some
Yeah.
pieces are um, just completely brought to fruition naturally,
Hmm.
not premeditated.
How important is experimentation? I know you mentioned investigating and researching, and playing with the material and the geometrical forms. eh, But do you find experimentation with different mediums, different ideas to be important in your
Very.
work? And maybe how, I don't think there's a science to it of saying, okay, I need to experiment 10 hours a week in order to come up with something new. I'm not sure eh, about that, but I know a lot of younger artists struggle with the balance between, do I just experiment all the time and create 100,000 different things? Or is there a way to structure experimentation so that it continues to help your work evolve in the right
There's,
way?
I think, is it Dali? Let inspiration catch you working. I think that's the quote.
Mm-hmm.
It's just I even experiment in my own pieces. Just I have an idea. Sometimes it works and sometimes I show it and there's lot of pieces that did not work. That
Mhm.
in textures, I mean, I'll get an idea and I'll run to, the art store, pick it up, try it out. Didn't work. Okay, move on. But the idea is to keep going.
Mhm. Mhm.
Try, it's difficult to find your like the avenue of your style. That's and it's important to maintain um my father's work, it's a Rayo. You can't mistake it for another artist. And that's the
Mhm.
one important thing I think is individuality in the art world. Um to try new textures, to try new things, but still making sure that you're in your authentic expression
Mhm.
and
Right,
creative.
create your own language, right? And in your language, there's gonna be words and structures that are similar or grab inspiration from someone else, but in to the outside world and to yourself is your own language, and it represents you mm, as well. Wonderful. Now, I want to talk about legacy as well. You mentioned your father. Of course, as we said at the beginning, you come from a family of creative and artistic people. Um, Actually, one of the things that I'm working on with for our partners is how do we help artists not only build successful commercial partnerships, but also how do we help artists and estates plan for legacy, right? You create artworks and they can be infinite for the rest of history. You never know. And having a father that has a legacy nowadays, of course, and you're building your own. What does having a legacy mean for an artist? Sometimes we're so in the day to day, we're so worried about, oh, are we going to exhibit next month? Am I selling an artwork this week? But it's hard to think about in 20 years, 50 years, what I want my artwork to be. Where do I want to be? Do you think about that
Yeah, I
at
do.
all?
I learned it from my father. He was extremely organized. He was there. He was the piler. So in the studio, I had the pile. I saw the piles and piles of papers, of drawings, of newspaper clippings, but they were all organized. And he was really meticulous about saving all of his newspaper clippings, all of his sketches we have at the museum, all of the sketches that he ever made. They're organized by year. And that was him.
Wow.
All the photographs of all of his paintings, organized by year, organized by exhibit, organized by, whatever else it had to be visually. And I learned that. So I even started taking photos of my work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, I have all that put together, learning from him, but also showing how my process, how each piece comes into being,
Mm-hmm.
which is also very important for later, when one is not around, to show how your work was made for
Mm-hmm.
personal, for family, or for
Absolutely.
going in a museum. So I took what I learned from him and I kicked it up a notch with showing that process,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting
Okay.
for you as well,
Yeah.
because you look back on the images and you're like, oh, I was starting the work in a different way than I am now. So you even learn from yourself and the way how you've progressed and how you've evolved.
I mean, that's a way of experimenting,
Mhm.
too. I always think is a pity when, let's say, I meet an artist and I ask about quote unquote the archive or what other things have you done in the past, and they don't take pictures or they don't know where their work is, or they don't care to keep in touch with their work in in a way. And I think all those things are really important, as you said, for family, but also for yourself as an artist and in your process, mm, too. So
And
yeah,
even
it's
what
really
I saw
important.
my father doing, and something that I learned from him, was he would look back on his sketches and look back on the photographs of the old pieces, and he would take from that and build. So I've done the same. You know,
Oh,
I'll take an
amazing.
old piece that I really loved. I really loved the color, a piece that I did that was blue and gray like this. And I went back to it and it really moved me. What else, what can I take from it? How can I build off of it? And I came up with this. And it's a completely different piece. But
Hmm.
I'm growing from my own inspiration of my own work.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's egotistical to work and learn from yourself as well. Because you
That's
also learn,
amazing.
you build off of yourself. So you're
Hmm.
learning about yourself even more
Hmm.
through the past and through your previous work.
That's amazing. When you start as an artist, you take inspiration from other people, but then through that process, you can just start taking inspiration from yourself as well. You've worked, in all sorts of projects. I know you've done some collaborations, and I would love for you to talk about, and I see it there on the screen, a beautiful leather bag and accessories. How does your work translate into collaborations, into brands? A lot of people think that a collaboration is just grabbing a work of art and basically pasting it into an object, eh, too, but especially with your work that is very three-dimensional, for example, um, at least a big percentage of it, how does that process work for you?
Well, working with Viviana Hernandez, who's the designer I'm collaborating with on the bags, she contacted me. Her designs on her bags were slightly dimensional, but she came across my work and said, she contacted me and she said, how can we work together? I would love for your work to be on my bags. So the great thing about collaborations is that it's, a 50-50 understanding and a coming together of ideas and how, she knows how to work with leather. I've worked with leather before, but it's how we can bring and mesh our ideas together and create a product. I came up with the idea of hand cutting the pieces for her. So there's an essence of my hand actually was on that bag before it was made. So it's not machine stamped, it's not machine cut. So it's one unique piece every time that we sell one. And then we came up with the idea of the boxes and the packaging and all that, which I love because, working so many years in packaging, it was just so,
Absolutely.
but it's the beauty. Oh, and it's picking out the colors, what colors are available, what colors work together, what colors are on trend. And that came into my whole fashion idea and my whole fashion background. So it was just a mesh of things that I had always wanted to do. And working well with a partner is also wonderful to see what creative minds can come up with.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it almost infuses and fuels each bag or product as its own piece. It has a story behind it, and not just the brand that you're collaborating with, of course, but then your own personal story. And the I don't know if the word is the struggle of creating this piece, but the effort, it adds a special layer to it.
Exactly.
Eh, So my last question to you, and just to finalize, you mentioned trends, right? You mentioned trends relating to color. How do you stay up with trends? How do trends inform your work without changing it? A lot of artists, I feel like nowadays could feel pressured by trends and how they need to translate that into their art. And through history, we see that artists are, advocates of their time in a way. They're like the journalists
Mhm.
in many ways. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, my father always was like, just do your own thing and be authentic. And
Hmm.
his work and his colors are very iconic for him. He worked with, the primary colors and maybe 2 second with yellow. It was yellow, red, blue, green, and he didn't even use purple or orange much. He used variants of those and black and white. And so his work was always iconic in that sense. There were no trendy tones or colors. And I brought that with me into my work. I mean, I'll be inspired by a butterfly. You know, I saw a butterfly with a red and a blue and a gray kind of, and then I translated it into this. So some things I can see that there's a new trend, like, you know, the new orangey, you know, tangerine tones for this year or whatever trend. Okay, that could be an inspiration, but if it doesn't come out of me, I'm not going to worry about whether or not it's up to the standards of this year. It doesn't faze me, and it doesn't worry me either. I mean, in all the art shows and all the galleries that I go to, I don't pay attention to that much. I mean, I know if a collector's coming in, it's going to be personal for them what the piece means. Mostly, I know some collectors buy on trend with what the new interior design trend is as well. But for a real collector, I think it's more of a personal level. So
Absolutely.
just being authentic with what comes to you and what you bring out in yourself, I think is more important.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It's always so nice to speak with you. I always learn so much from you. And where can people find you? I know you have Instagram, your website, also on the For Our Partners website, and socials as well. But maybe we tell people what the
My
handles
website,
are.
it's Sara Rayo, SaraRayo.com. Instagram is The Art of Sara Rayo. That's me there. And Facebook, the same, The Art of Sara Rayo. So, and of course, with you guys at For Our Partners. But it's been a
Amazing.
pleasure. We always open up so many different levels of conversation. I love that we do that, and we can jump back and forth. And I hope to do that again with you soon.
Absolutely. And there's tons of things coming. So everyone stay in the loop.
Yeah, excited.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.